Hello, and welcome back to Skydog Reviews. It's been a while, folks. For that, I do apologize. I've been collecting hats over the summer. Have no fear, I'm not hatless or capless. So I do have a stack sitting over to the right of me here. But today is not that day. Today's not going to be the big hat review. Today is a special day. I'm only reviewing just one cap today, and is a special cap near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure most folks' hearts. Today we're going to review the Tunnel to Towers cap. A little bit of a unique review in that I'm not doing a lot of my normal format here. It's going to be a little different, so buckle in. It's going to be a lot different format than you're used to seeing. No pricing information, anything like that. I'll do that when I go back to my normal videos, hopefully here in the next week or so. But it's for those of you who aren't aware, when you work in the airline industry, the summer is a very, very challenging season. And in my particular position that I'm in now, we're busy pretty much every day. Don't get a whole lot of downtime in the summer. It's very hard to get motivated to come back and do videos. Usually, your days off, the last thing you want to do is anything creative. The brain's fried a little bit. You need a little recovery time, and it just, for me anyways, I have a tough time being creative unless I can get motivated. I don't want to put out bad quality videos for you, so that's why we've had the gap. It's, pretty much, I think, did the same thing last summer, so I try not to do it, and I've come close to putting videos out, but you get home that last day and you start your days off, the last thing I'm thinking about is putting out a YouTube video. For that, I do apologize, folks. So it's been a while. So today's review, you got a little more background history about me. Once I get a few done reviewing the cap. The cap's very important to me, so I want to get the review done. And for those of you who want to just totally skip the story that goes with it, or my story, you can just end the video there. I'll put chapters in, so if you don't want to follow along, that's fine. For those of you who have a little bit of interest, stick around. May learn a little thing or two, and hopefully get a better perspective of who the Skydog is and what his background is. So let's get to the review. So today, I've already mentioned the Tunnel to Towers special edition just came out last week on a Wednesday. Unusual release date. Also unusual in that this cap is, or at least BSCALLY is taking some of their profit and sending it to an organization, the Tunnel to Towers organization, with the cap's named after. And if you want to visit them, it's t2t.org. I'll try to put the link right here. But it's an organization that was started post 9/11. It was started by the family of a firefighter from Brooklyn Squad 1. On the morning of September 11th, he had gotten off work, was heading out to go golfing with his brothers when he heard the news on his scanner that a plane had hit Tower 1, or the North Tower. Called his wife, had her contact her brother, say he's not going to make it. Went back to the firehouse, picked up all his gear, got in his personal vehicle, and drove back towards Manhattan. And unfortunately, when he got to the, let me get this straight, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, it had already been closed off to traffic. Everybody was coming out, they weren't letting anybody in. So he parked his truck, pulled all his gear, 60 pounds of gear, and ran through the tunnel into Manhattan and into the World Trade Center area, and went in to help his fellow firefighters that were working the scene, and tragically did not survive the events of that day. So, a sad story, and I really give the family a lot of credit. It's very hard to start an organization like this, especially when you have to relive, these memories. It's a great honor that they have done that and chosen to continue to honor other firefighters and veterans with their donations. So if you wish to donate more than Boston Scholars are donating, please feel free to visit their website, and they have avenues to continue to donate there. But let's get on to the cap. So take a first look here. As you can see, it's a nice navy blue. It is in the style of the Uke. I think was the first cap I bought anyways, that had the vent holes, 8 panels. It's got traditional button cap with the white for the button and the air holes. So if you own a Uke that's in soft cotton, they call this a cotton blend. The most similar cotton is what I'm wearing here. This is the Declaration, or if you've owned the Independence, I think a little bit feels more like the Decoration than the Independence, and it's not the soft cotton of the Uke, but fabric-wise, it is a fairly lightweight cap. It does have the vent holes. So if you're familiar with those caps, you kind of know what you're getting here. I don't know if they're going to re-release. I think it's sold out fairly quickly. But that's what you're looking at. So a nice lightweight or cotton blend that it's more like a lighter cotton, similar to the Declaration. But the special part of this cap goes, you've seen an 8 panel, you've seen it, the vent holes and the button. But we have a couple of unique items in this cap. We have an embroidered ribbon that is a U.S. flag base with stars and stripes. You also have the Tunnel to Towers logo. You can see the firefighter, the flag, and the Twin Towers as an 11. And then they also released a Tunnel to Towers Foundation pin. So you have that as well. Inside the cap, same logo as the pin, Tunnel to Towers Foundation. So nice contrast there. The brim, it's cotton, white cotton contrasting brim there. I'm a big fan of 8 panels. I'm a big fan of the vented caps living in Texas. So when I saw this and I saw the foundation it was going to, I jumped on it immediately. Let's get this on the head. All right, so it's a nice looking cap, actually, really nice. The white kind of jumps out a little bit more than the red of the Uke. Great 8 panel fit right out of the box. 2XL, which is my normal cap size. Just a great cap. This video, if all goes well, will be coming out the morning of September 11th. So if you're seeing this, hopefully today is the day. A great day to memorialize those who lost their lives on that event. And I plan on wearing this cap all day tomorrow into work and thereafter. So give you all your views. Like I said, if you're able to get one out secondhand, and I'm able to release it again next year, definitely worth the purchase, and especially if the money Boston Scally is donating to the foundation. Well worth it. I would have paid more if they had, wanted to raise more money. But you do have the website if you wish to do that. All right, now we go. I'm gonna break the string a little bit. We'll go into a little bit of my backstory. And this actually came about, I hadn't really thought about it. And then I was in one of the Facebook groups. You have the Boston Scally crew and you have the Boston Scally Insiders group. And I won't mention which one, but someone had posted, when they posted the preview of this cap, wow, why is BSCALLY doing this, not donating any extra money and everything. And I wrote a pretty positive post on it. Like I said, anybody that lost family members that day, it's kind of painful to bring it up every year. And especially if you're working with a foundation where it gets brought up on a daily basis, it's very hard to do. And it's so impressive that this family is able to continue on with this work and help others when they lost so much in their own lives. As far as how that relates to me, so I had written this post and someone had responded, and I had said I really haven't for the last 24 years really discussed 9/11 a whole lot. Every once in a while someone asked me where I was. Was I at work that day? And I wasn't. But, I've had questions like that. But for the most part, for 24 years, I've been really trying to forget that day. I know everybody says never forget. And trust me, I'm never going to forget that day. But things hit a little more personal for me. I did not lose any family members that day. But at the time, I was a flight dispatcher or an aircraft dispatcher, or have been my whole career. But I was working at United Airlines. I had been working there. I started there in the mid to late 90s and worked through in September 11th. And then after the bankruptcy, went on to another airline by choice. But yeah, I know the people that were directly involved. I know the dispatcher that had both flights that day. I know the manager that day. I know the people in the command center in Washington for the FAA that were working that day. And I've just never been able to bring myself to really dig deeply into the events of that day. And to explain why, I guess I'll explain a little bit more about what an aircraft dispatcher, flight dispatcher does. For those that are unaware, and most folks don't worry. If you ever heard such a thing, most folks haven't. Aircraft dispatchers, they're licensed professionals. We get licensed by the FAA or the DOT, I think is more directly. Just like a pilot gets licensed, just like a mechanic gets licensed, just like an air traffic controller gets licensed. You have a written test, you have a practical test, and they have schools to do this, or you can do it through self-study over a longer period of time. But essentially, as an aircraft dispatcher, what I do on a daily basis, or I'm more of a specialist now, but as an aircraft dispatcher when I started, you're given a list of flights, primarily by 121 airlines. 121's a part in the FAR regulations, but it's commercial airplanes, I think more than 19 seats. Pretty much most airliners or regional jets you go on is going to have a dispatcher working for you. But we get a list of flights to start the day. And what we do is we go through a release process. We go through all the weather, go through NOTAMs, which are back to being called Notice to Airmen. It had changed Notice to Air Missions for a while, and then it's back to Notice to Airmen. But it is silly thing, not silly, but I mean, it's important safety information, but like runway outage, taxiway outage, light outages, approach light outages, anything in an airport environment or an airspace environment that could impact your ability to fly a certain route or use a certain airport or use an airport to certain weather minimums. NOTAMs are expansive. Weather is expansive. So we have certain minimums we have to meet in order to legally dispatch a flight from point A to point B. So we get that flight list, we go through that flight, we get through our weather, we go through our NOTAMs. We then go through what is the aircraft. Are there any discrepancy on the aircraft? They call them MEL items or CDL items, minimum equipment list or configuration deviation list. And so if there's anything non-standard or broken or missing, they go on one of these two lists. We go and review those. And depending on the item, it could be as simple as the tray table. That's a nuisance, not a nuisance, but it's a passenger convenience item. A lot of those don't show up depending on your airline in the preamble in the MEL, but it could be as simple as that or something more complex, like a component in the navigation system or a component in the pressurization system or a component in the electrical system. So you then have to go through and there's restrictions and we apply those restrictions and see if we can legally complete this flight from A to B. So it's a complex job and we do this for every flight. Every flight you fly on a 121 carrier has a dispatcher sitting in office somewhere that has done this for your flight. When they complete it all, everything's safe and legal to continue. That release gets, now it's electronically. They used to get sent in various ways, but it's electronic now for the most part. And that goes out to the captain of the flight. When he checks in, he gets a copy of your release. He gets a copy of the flight plan and then a weather and NOTAM package, and he reviews it. Any questions, because we make a lot of decisions on their behalf before they show up. We choose the weather alternate if it's required. So that's a third airport that has to be monitored by us. And then we also choose the fuel load, which is based on several factors. And depending what airline you work at, you can have different minimum fuels in certain categories. But we have reserve fuel on every flight. We have the burn, we have alternate. So all the fuel is taken into account, and then we have the ability to add additional fuel for unforeseen circumstances, whether it be ATC, weather, volume. Maybe we know it's extended taxi outs. You're a fly out in New York, you know what I'm talking about. So we take all that effect, we come up with the fuel load. That goes on the release. The captain gets the release, either signs it and says, yep, I'm happy with this, everything's good. And they go and then they proceed with their checks of the airplane and their processes. If they don't, they will end up contacting us. Or if something changes, let's say they got on the airplane, some other item has been written up on the MEL CDL list, they will call us and we have to then contact the maintenance control and we resolve that issue. But once everything's good, crew gets on the airplane, they do their processes, and they go and they load the airplane, push the gate, and go to taxi to takeoff. Well, as a dispatcher, I am still responsible to follow that flight. So what I am doing is ensuring any changes to the information that we agreed upon in that release, weather conditions, NOTAMs, ATC constraints, anything that's going to affect the safety of flight, anything that could potentially affect a decision-making point on fuel or weather, like I said, plethora of things that can go on, we're communicating with the crew. Most of that is done electronically, almost like a text message. It's an ACAR system in the cockpit of the airplane. We can also do it via radio frequencies. We also can do it via a phone patch, which also uses radio frequencies. Newer airplanes, more so on wide bodies and flights traveling low oceans, also have sat phones. So there's multiple ways for us to get a hold of them and contact them. And the last case scenario would be to call an ATC facility and have them contact us. But we're talking to the crews or the captains specifically on a regular basis, and they see something different, we see something different, we're communicating this. And that goes until they land at the destination airport. Once they land, we're kind of like out of that flight's on the ground, they taxi the gate, and that flight's complete. As a dispatcher, I can't go home. If there's one flight left, I don't have a relief. I can't just leave. I am there till that flight gets in. So we're kind of like the third crew member, you have the captain, the first officer, and we're the people on the ground. We do the pre-planning, we do a lot of monitoring, do a lot of communication as things change. If something happens en route, the passenger medicals, mechanical issues, weather changes, anything that is going to require a change of plan, the captain and I will communicate and come up with the plan, discuss the plan, and finalize the plan and execute the plan. As a dispatcher, I have resources at my disposal in my office. I have people that can reach out to the stations. We have doctors that we can reach out to and patch them into the airplane so that they can communicate with the crew if we have a sick passenger. But yeah, so I have a wealth of experience and knowledge sitting in my office that I can rely upon to get more information if we don't have it available directly. So that's what we do. Now, as a dispatcher at United Airlines back in 2001, I was working the transcon desk. I was working primarily the San Francisco, Los Angeles areas, includes like San Diego, Ontario, San Francisco is, you have Oakland and San Jose. Transcons are basically going coast to coast, and I work west to east. We had 4 desks, 2 work west to east, 2 work east to west. And my primary destination was Washington Dulles, but I also had Miami, Florida, I think Orlando, Tampa, and Atlanta were the secondary cities that and I think Baltimore, we had a couple transcons too. And I worked that desk for several years in the afternoon shift, and you kind of get to know the crews. You see their name on the release, even if I don't know them, I may not see them personally. I may not have ever talked to them via phone. We don't really talk on the phone very often. But you see the name and you're communicating with ACARs, especially on transcons. There's a lot of time to communicate with these flights. Things can change, so you are updating them with information as they move across the country. So you kind of get a feel, and transcons was kind of specialized, so you saw the same crews over and over again. So you get to know them. And in July of 2001, I went on my required jump seat ride as part of my qualifications. I have to do 5 hours a year in the cockpit jump seat. They call it Ops Fam, Operations Familiarization. So kind of we're in there communicating with the crews directly and seeing what they're going through to help us better understand how best to communicate with them and what resources they have available, and to see what nuances at certain airports are, what are the challenges. So it's a way to get us out in the field. And in July of 2001, my folks still lived in Massachusetts, so I always usually found a way to end up in Boston. I ended up jump seating from Chicago here out to Denver International. I picked up a 757 from Denver back to Boston, and I flew with this great crew. And one of my favorite jump seats. Really friendly crew, very, very friendly captain. Discussed a lot of things, and he was one of the guys I see all the time. So we had a lot to talk about, just in general, because we had worked together without, seeing each other face to face. So this is kind of nice to see one of these folks right up close and personal. I'm not going to mention names. This is me, so we'll just leave it at that. So that being said, I had gone to Boston to hopefully witness the birth of my niece. I was there for like 7 days. Didn't happen, so I ended up flying back. Fast forward to September, and it was on September 10th, 2001. My wife and I were taking a cruise. We flew up to Vancouver on the 10th and boarded a cruise ship. And we're doing a northbound inside passage cruise from Vancouver up to Seward, and then we'd fly back out of Alaska the next weekend. So went off without a hitch, got on the the boat no problem. Actually, relatively quickly, because we waited forever to get through customs immigration and Vancouver airport. Got on the ship. It's our first day of vacations. Next morning, we get up a little later than we normally do, and went down, had breakfast, and they sit us at this table with another couple. We couldn't get our own table, so we were sitting with this other couple, and it was fine. And, they were a little bit older than us. I think it was around 31 at the time, so they were probably in their early to mid 40s. And the guy starts out with, "Oh man, did you see the news this morning?" And in my brain, I'm like, I really don't care what Microsoft hit. I'm not running the stock market here. I'm not, worried about anything like that. I figured he was trying to tell me what the market had done. He kind of looked like a stockbroker type. I said, "No, I haven't even looked at the news," and we hadn't. We just got up and we moseyed down to breakfast, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're under a terrorist attack," and I'm like, he was looked at. I'm like, "Well, what do you mean we're under a terrorist attack?" And he's like, "Yeah, a plane hit one of the World Trade Centers," and I'm like. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, yeah, okay, so a Cessna runs into the World Trade Center in bad weather or something. I mean, well, that's not a terrorist attack. And so we finished breakfast, didn't really discuss it any further. And I think at that point, I don't know what time it was exactly. I think we only knew about the North Tower being hit. But like I said, I was just going back to the bedroom. I was thinking that it's a small GA plane. We're under a terrorist attack. And so we go back to the room after breakfast and turn on the TV and turn it on to CNN. And obviously, I'm now doing what the rest of the country's doing. I just stayed in front of that TV pretty much the rest of the day because it was just so unbelievable. Even now I find it's very hard to discuss. And I'm trying, but so I watched like everybody else, and they're showing the replays and what's going on. They have the talking heads on there trying to figure out what's going on. And at this point, they didn't identify the flights. They hadn't, all they knew is that I think by the time we'd get up there, the second tower had been hit. And I think the Pentagon had been hit. And I think the Shanksville, Pennsylvania crash had occurred. They didn't have us have great footage of that because unlike New York and DC, it was kind of remote. But I'm just in awe just watching this, and it's unbelievable. Well, they start scrolling the flights. They knew the American flight that had hit the North Tower and the American flight that hit the Pentagon, and they start scrolling the crew names. And then when they have United 175, I start scrolling the crew names, and I look at that first crew names on the 767, and it was one of my guys, one of my Transcon guys. I'd never met him personally, but it really hit home at that point. It's like, man, that's one of my guys. That's one of my captains that I work with on a daily basis. And then as they got more information, then they gave us United 93. And they start scrolling the names of the crew across the bottom. And there he is. The captain that I had just jump sat with in July. That great guy. It really hurt. And even 24 years later, as you can see, it's still very difficult to talk about. So, and I was pretty much done. I was like in a fog after that. I just, the rest of that day we spent there, and I think we grabbed lunch and went back to the room and went to dinner. And it was just, I don't know. I can't even tell you what I was feeling. It's just so much loss, so much unknown. All the flights in the country have been grounded, which is just absolutely insane. But it had to be done. So we're on a cruise ship, we're heading to Alaska, going to fly, tons of questions. Now it's starting to like, okay, how am I going to get home? All sorts of questions just flowing through the brain. So it's just a little too much. And so yeah, obviously things started flying 4 days later, and we were able, obviously, to fly out of Anchorage and get back to when I was living in Chicago at the time. Going back to work was very surreal. Then you go back to work, you find out the guys that were working and what had happened, and I'm not going to go through that. That's their stories, and not mine. But it's still surreal, and I was a trainer in the dispatch department as well. So I did aircraft. I did 7.5s, 7.6s, and 777s. Even with the flying returning, a lot of it was getting scrapped because no one was flying. If you remember those days, no one wanted to fly on an airplane. No one wanted to hop on a commercial airliner, so planes were empty. So, we weren't flying a whole lot, flying what we had to, but flights were empty. Fall's a good time of year, not a lot of weather problems. So it got kind of boring at work just because there's so little going on. So I went to, I'd get updates. We used to use paper manuals back then, and I remember I had some updates in my locker and for the training book. So I was like, I'm just going to go update some managed training offices. The guy's like, okay, no problem. I go back to the training office and had a little keypad code to get into it so people wouldn't go in and it didn't belong in there. So I hit my keypad code and I opened the door. And there's a room full of guys, and there's stuff on the boards that I probably wasn't supposed to see. And they all had sidearms. They all had some form of handgun on their waist. And I was like, okay. And I went to turn around and they're like, oh, wait. And I'm like, oh boy. It was the FBI. They were already in there digging through all this data. And I just told them what I needed. And I'm like, I just need this set of 8 books. And they let me take them out. And I did it at my desk instead of in the training room. They said, can I bring them back? They're like, yep, no problem. Brought them back in, no big deal. But yeah, it was just surreal. Everything that was going on back at work once I got back. So, it's just crazy times. And then you're starting to worry, people aren't flying. United, was making announcements. They were getting rid of fleets, not just airplanes, fleets. The 737-200, the 727. And man, I don't know if we got rid of the DC-10s at that point, but boom, some of these older planes just disappeared and went right to the desert and gone. Just wasn't flying to support them. So, you know, you're starting to worry about your career and whatnot. But yeah, it was difficult times. And this is probably the most I've talked about it in 24 years. I just really don't enjoy it. You know, I was in dark place for several years. Yeah, it'd be fine, and then, you know, someone would say something, someone would bring up something, and it just, you know, send you down into the rabbit hole again. The thing I remember the most from that morning on CNN is, like, they hadn't identified the planes yet, and when the 767 hit Tower 2, they had a shot from underneath on the street looking up, and as the plane went overhead, I could see the dark blue belly, and then there's about a 6-inch wide stripe of bare metal. And that was unique to United. That strip of bare metal was for corrosion control. They found if they left paint down there, it had moisture that got from in behind would kind of all start corrosion down there, or potentially cause corrosion if it was left on, you know, under the paint. So they intentionally left that 6-inch wide strip clear. So as soon as I saw that go overhead, and I'm like, damn, that's one of ours. No one else had that. And yeah, sure enough, within 45 minutes or so, they identified it as United 175. And it's just, but yeah, dark places. And it wasn't really until this summer I started getting a lot of September 11th footage in my Facebook and YouTube feeds. So I've never been able to look at before, and I finally started just to see what it was. You know, I started learning stories about the survivors and the first responders. You know, not that I hadn't heard the stories, but I tend to like shut it out. I just couldn't deal with going back down that rabbit hole. So maybe that's why I'm talking today to you. You know, because an appreciation for all those folks at the Pentagon and at the World Trade Center that, you know, selflessly gave of themselves. They gave up their lives to save others. Saw some of the survivor interviews, stuff. Like I said, I just couldn't fathom watching this stuff, and started looking at it. Just amazing stories and how they survived. And, you know, they were coming down, firefighters were going up, and, you know, they barely got out. So these guys didn't make it. And that's what this hat is all about. And maybe I'm finally, you know, now that I've seen a little bit more of it, this means a little bit more to me for all those who had to deal with the, you know, recovery for the families, recovery for the first responders, you know, the police, the fire, the EMTs, you know. No one was left unharmed. The families that, you know, never had someone come home that night. Its organization, such as the Tunnel Towers Foundation, they really stepped up and helped people out. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I've kind of poured the soul out a little much. And you see, probably still not a little comfortable talking about the subject, even to this day. I'm getting better. But anyway, since today is 9/11, if you're watching this when it releases, please take a moment to be thankful to those in the community that are always willing to help, regardless of the cost. They gave a price that I'll never be able to repay them for what they did, their selflessness. So a little somber note, but thank you for watching Skydar Reviews. I hope you have a good day. See you next time.